Adrian Holloway was 41 years old, and he believed, in the particular quiet way that certain men hold their deepest convictions, that a home was something you built from the inside out, not with money, though he had earned enough of it over 17 years running a mid-sized logistics company out of Charlotte, North Carolina, not with square footage or new appliances or the kind of landscaping that made neighbors slow their cars. He built it with presence, with the specific, unremarkable, completely essential act of being there. He was the kind of man who remembered things. The way his daughter Lily liked her grilled cheese cut into triangles, never rectangles, a preference established at age 4 that she had never once reconsidered. The exact route she walked home from her middle school on Tuesdays when drama club ran late, so he could drive it slowly if she wasn't answering her phone. The name of every teacher, every friend, every minor character in the running drama of a 12-year-old's social life. He kept these things not because anyone asked him to. He kept them because loving someone carefully is its own kind of discipline. His wife, Renata, was the kind of woman who moved through a room and made it rearrange itself around her. Vivid, socially magnetic, effortlessly composed in any company. She had a gift for warmth that made strangers feel immediately known. It was one of the first things he had loved about her, the way she could put anyone at ease, the way a room lifted slightly when she entered it. He had spent 13 years watching that gift operate in rooms large and small, watching it work on clients and neighbors and his own extended family, and it had never once occurred to him that a gift for making people feel seen could be turned, with surgical precision, in a direction he was not meant to understand. He found out on a Thursday evening in March, not dramatically, not with a confrontation or a caught message or a stranger's phone call. He found out the way a structural engineer sometimes discovers that a building he trusted completely has been quietly failing for years. A number that didn't add up. A line item in a joint account he reviewed that Thursday while Lily was at soccer practice and Renata was at a wine event downtown. A payment to a law firm. One he didn't recognize, billed under a case number, $1,100 drawn 3 weeks prior. He sat with it for a long moment at the kitchen table with a cup of tea going cold at his elbow. His first instinct was simple error, a misfiled payment, something clerical. He was not a suspicious man by nature. He had never had cause to be. But the engineer in him, the part that had built 17 years of careful systems, did not dismiss the anomaly. It filed it. It began looking for related data. By the time Lily came home and announced that practice had ended early because Coach Simmons had twisted her ankle, Adrian had found 2 more payments. Same firm. Different dates. Going back 8 months. He set the laptop aside. He helped Lily heat up leftovers. He listened to her recount the full drama of the twisted ankle, with the complete attention she deserved. He asked the right questions. He laughed at the right moments. He tucked every one of his findings into a compartment that he sealed with the same quiet discipline he applied to everything that mattered. That night, lying in the dark beside Renata's steady breathing, he did not move for a very long time. He thought about the law firm. He thought about 8 months of payments. He thought about the particular quality of composure Renata had maintained across every recent dinner, every weekend morning, every ordinary Tuesday. The composure of someone who is not troubled, or the composure of someone who has already made a decision and is simply waiting for the correct moment to execute it. He thought about Lily. By the time the bedroom was fully light the next morning, he had already decided he was not going to do what his pain wanted him to do. He was going to do what the situation required. The first call he made was to a family attorney named Raymond Cross. He had heard the name twice in the previous year from 2 different colleagues who had each, separately, described him as the kind of lawyer who does not lose because he does not leave anything to chance. Adrian called at 7:45 in the morning before the office opened and left a message that was 4 sentences long and entirely factual. Raymond called back within the hour. They met for lunch the following Monday. Raymond listened without interruption, asked 6 questions, and then said, simply, "We are going to need documentation. Everything you can find, organized chronologically. Can you do that?" Adrian said he could. He was already 3 steps ahead of that answer. Over the following weeks, he moved with the deliberateness of a man who understands that the window between discovery and action is the most critical interval in any complex situation. He retained Raymond formally. He opened a separate personal account and began a methodical transfer of his individual business assets into a properly structured trust. Lily's name on every document that mattered, every transfer time-stamped and above reproach. He pulled the full financial history of the joint accounts, going back further than he initially thought necessary, and found a pattern that went back 14 months. Renata had been consulting with the law firm for over a year. The case number corresponded to a domestic asset division filing. Preliminary, not yet formally submitted, but drafted in full. He obtained a copy through Raymond, who obtained it through proper legal channels with a thoroughness that Adrian found professionally admirable. He read it on a Tuesday evening in his car, in a parking garage near his office, windows up, the city moving indifferently 20 feet away. The filing proposed a division of assets at a particular valuation of the company, a valuation that corresponded to a projected future quarter, not the current one. Someone had estimated that the business would hit a significantly higher number by late summer, and the filing intended to capture that number. He sat with that for a while. He set the document on the passenger seat. He placed both hands flat on his thighs. He thought about 14 months, about wine events and out-of-town conferences, and the particular quality of absence that can exist between 2 people who are still sharing the same kitchen and the same bed and the same subscription to a streaming service neither of them had time to watch. He thought about the first time Lily had called him daddy, the hospital hallway, the specific weight of the word and the specific weight of her in his arms at the same moment. The understanding that had arrived in that moment, complete and permanent, that there was now a person in the world for whom he was the primary fixed point, and that this was not a burden but a privilege of the most serious kind. He drove home. He made dinner. He helped Lily with a history project about the Louisiana Purchase. He did not say a single word that was not completely ordinary. He was not going to let grief drive. He had seen what happened when people handed the wheel to their pain. He had watched it happen to his own father after a business betrayal 20 years ago, the years-long wreckage of it, the slow, quiet erosion of everything the man had built while he was busy being wounded. Adrian had filed that away at 19 and never forgotten it. The second development came from a direction he had not anticipated. His older sister, Patricia, steady, sensible Patricia, who had known Renata for a decade and had sat at their Thanksgiving table every year since the beginning, called him on a Wednesday afternoon and said only, "I need to show you something," not over the phone. "Can you come by tonight?" He went. She had a text thread on her phone. Between Renata and a man named Davis, no last name in the contact, the kind of informal single-name listing that is either entirely innocent or exactly what it appears to be. In this case, the content removed any ambiguity. The messages covered a 4-month window. They were frank and specific about the filing timeline, about the projected valuation, about what Renata expected to walk away with and when. One message read, "Once the Q3 numbers land, that's the number I lock in. Raymond doesn't know about the second account yet. We move then." Patricia set the phone face down on the kitchen counter. She looked at her brother. She had the expression of a woman who had been carrying something heavy and is finally, with some relief and considerable guilt, setting it down. "I should have come to you sooner. I kept telling myself I was misreading the tone." Adrian picked up his coffee. He took a slow sip. "How long have you had this?" 6 weeks. He nodded. He did not make her feel worse about the 6 weeks. It did not serve him to do that, and beyond the strategy of it, it was simply not fair. She was there now. From that point forward, Patricia became the one person in his immediate circle he could trust without qualification. She attended family functions and documented what was volunteered in unguarded moments. On one occasion, she photographed a second phone, prepaid, that appeared briefly on Renata's kitchen counter at their mother's birthday lunch and disappeared before the afternoon was over. Every piece of information moved through Raymond's office. Every piece was preserved, organized, and verified. At home, nothing changed visibly. Adrian maintained every ordinary rhythm. He drove Lily to school. He made the Saturday morning waffles that had been a standing tradition since she was 6. The ones with the blueberries pressed in because she had once made a face about plain ones, and the ritual had calcified into law. He attended her soccer games and stood at the right edge of the sideline where she always looked for him when she scored. He kept every appointment, every bedtime, every minor promise. He did not pretend to himself that none of this was costing him anything. In the evenings after Lily was asleep, he sat at his desk and worked through documents and listened to the particular quality of silence in the house. Not the comfortable silence of a home at peace, the different kind, the kind that comes from two people who are still performing proximity while the real distance between them has already grown past a certain irreversible point. He had known that distance for a while, he realized. He had attributed it to the ordinary friction of a long marriage, to her growing career demands, to the accumulated busyness of their lives. He had attributed it to things that were reasonable and manageable, and did not require him to look at them too carefully. He looked at them now, and he allowed himself, in those late quiet evenings, to sit with the full weight of what he was seeing. He did not scream. He did not send the kind of message that cannot be unsent. He did not make the error of letting Renata know that anything had shifted, that the ground beneath her plan had already changed in ways she could not yet detect. He had a voice-activated recording device. Compact, professionally sourced, calibrated, and tested. He placed it in the home office they shared during the weeks she had begun, conducting long phone calls with the door closed, calls she described, when asked, as work-related. They were not work-related. Raymond had everything he needed 6 days before the anniversary dinner that Renata had been planning for 3 weeks with the sustained enthusiasm of a woman who is building a scene, not celebrating a marriage. It was their 14th anniversary. She had made reservations at a restaurant in uptown Charlotte that she had been mentioning casually for 2 months. She had purchased a dress specifically for the occasion. She was, by every visible measure, delighted about the evening, the particular delight of a woman who has decided exactly how a scene will end and is simply enjoying the walk toward it. They arrived at the restaurant at 7:30. White tablecloths, low lighting, a wine list that Renata navigated with the practiced confidence of someone in a very good mood. They spoke about ordinary things, Lily's soccer tournament, a renovation project at her firm, a trip they had loosely discussed taking to Savannah. She was charming and warm and completely present in the way that people are when they feel the distinct satisfaction of a plan aligning exactly as intended. The food arrived. She reached into her purse. She set an envelope on the table beside his bread plate with the unhurried precision of someone who has rehearsed the gesture until it is effortless. I thought our 14th deserved something real. She was smiling. Go ahead. Adrian looked at the envelope. He looked at her face. He picked up the envelope, opened it, and removed the document inside. He read the first paragraph. He set it down. It was the asset division filing. Formally submitted that morning. As of 9:17 a.m., she had pulled the trigger today. At the same restaurant she had chosen herself, at the anniversary dinner she had planned herself, in front of the wine she had selected herself. She had built the stage and decided she was the only one with a script. He looked up at her. His expression was level and still, and gave her nothing. Check your phone. His voice was quiet. There's something in your email. She laughed, soft and certain. A laugh that said, I have already won this. She picked up her phone. She opened her email. The laugh stopped. The filing he had placed in her inbox through Raymond's office had been submitted at 7:52 that morning, 1 hour and 25 minutes before hers. The petition was complete, documented, and attached to 211 pages of supporting evidence organized by date, every financial irregularity, every discovered communication, the full 14-month timeline. 3 audio recordings, each clearly labeled, each containing Renata's own voice, discussing the plan, the timing, and the expected outcome with a specificity that left no interpretive room. A formal deposition notice for Davis, last name now known, full name now fully documented, and a single line from Raymond Cross at the bottom. Temporary custody petition for Lily Holloway filed simultaneously. Emergency hearing scheduled. The color in Renata's face changed in the way that colors change when the source of their warmth is removed. Not gradually. All at once. Her jaw tightened. Her hand, the one holding the phone, went slightly unsteady. She placed the phone face down on the tablecloth with the deliberate care of someone who needs both hands to do the next thing correctly. She looked up at him. Adrian. Her voice had changed. The warmth was gone from it. What came through instead was something rawer and more genuine than anything he had heard from her in months. A surprise that was, in its own way, almost honest. He said nothing. He set his napkin on the table. He stood up. He buttoned the middle button of his jacket the way he always did when he was preparing to leave a room that required it. And he walked out of the restaurant without raising his voice, without performing anything, without giving the moment any more weight than it had already earned by itself. Outside, Charlotte was doing what Charlotte does on a March evening, cool air with just enough residual warmth to remind you that spring is already decided, even if it hasn't fully arrived. He stood at the corner for a moment. He called Raymond. She filed at 9:17. We filed at 7:52. Raymond's voice was measured and professionally satisfied. We're in the right position. Go home to Lily. He did. He drove home, paid the babysitter, looked in on Lily, who was asleep with one arm hanging off the bed and her phone still lit in her hand with a group chat she had fallen asleep mid-sentence into. He gently set the phone on the nightstand. He pulled the blanket up. He stood in the doorway for a moment. He went to his own room and sat on the edge of the bed in the quiet. He did not celebrate. He did not feel relief yet, not the full version of it. He felt the particular stillness that comes when you have been holding a very heavy thing at arm's length for a long time, and you have finally, with great care, set it on the floor. The weight is still in the room, but it is no longer in your hands. The custody hearing was scheduled 12 days later. 4th floor of the Mecklenburg County Courthouse, a room that had seen enough of this kind of thing that the walls themselves had developed a certain professional neutrality. The judge assigned was the Honorable Bernard Okafor, 61 years old, 26 years on the family bench. Widely known, in legal circles that paid attention to such things, for a single governing principle. The child's continuity of care is not negotiable. Everything else is argument. That is not. Adrian arrived with Raymond and sat at the petitioner's table in a dark gray suit, a legal pad in front of him. He did not look at Renata, who sat across the room in a composed burgundy jacket that could not quite conceal the fact that her composure was doing a great deal of structural work today. Judge Okafor entered at 9:12. The room stood. He settled, opened the file, and began reading. He read for 7 minutes without speaking. His expression did not perform any of its reactions. It processed. It arrived at conclusions. It did not require an audience for any of this. He set the file down. He looked up. Mr. Cross. Raymond stood. He presented without theater. Evidence first. The financial timeline, 14 months, fully documented. The asset division filing and its correspondence to a specific projected valuation not yet realized, which established the forward-planning nature of the scheme. The audio recordings which he played at moderate volume with Renata's voice clear and specific above the room's ambient noise. He presented the text thread through Patricia's sworn affidavit, each message time-stamped and authenticated. Then Patricia took the stand. She came in from the side door in a dark blue blazer. She was composed in the way of someone who has made a decision that cost something and has made peace with the cost. She took the oath, she sat down, she looked at Raymond. His questions were direct, her answers were precise. She described the text thread, she described the prepaid phone. She described a conversation she had overheard at a family dinner in January, a fragment of a phone call in the back hallway, specific enough in its content that she had written down what she heard verbatim within 10 minutes of hearing it and had retained the note. Near the end, her voice did not break. Patricia was not a woman whose voice broke in courtrooms or anywhere else, but something shifted in it. Something quieter moved through the precision. My brother spent 14 years showing up for that family. Every school event, every soccer game, every ordinary Wednesday. Renata planned this across 14 months while he was doing that, while Lily was watching him do that. She paused. Lily is 12. She knows what dependability looks like because she has watched it her entire life. That matters. It should matter here. Judge Okafor did not move during the pause that followed. He had the stillness of a man who has learned to let certain statements occupy the room fully before he does anything to alter the air. When he spoke, it was with the specific economy of someone who does not require additional words to make a point land. The documentation before this court establishes a deliberate, extended effort to structure a divorce, proceeding around a financial projection, rather than the current state of the marriage. The communications presented indicate that the respondent's planning incorporated the minor child as a secondary financial consideration, not her welfare, her value as a custody instrument in an asset negotiation. He allowed that sentence to finish in the room. This court has one primary concern. It is not punitive. It is not about the conduct of adults toward each other. It is about the child, and about what the child's day-to-day life has looked like, what it should continue to look like, and who has been providing it. The rulings came down. Temporary primary custody granted to Adrian Holloway, effective immediately. Lily to remain in the family home. Respondent to vacate within 5 business days. Supervised visitation for Renata Holloway, 6 hours per week, at a court-designated location, with a monitor present. Alimony petition suspended pending full financial review. Asset division recalculated from current valuation, not projected. Davis Whitmore ordered to submit a full financial deposition within 21 days. Each ruling arrived in the room like a door closing, quietly, permanently. Renata's attorney put a hand on her arm at the second ruling. She did not move. She sat with the stillness of someone who has run the calculation and arrived at a number they did not prepare for. As the room began to clear, she stood. She crossed to Adrian before her attorney could redirect her. He was stacking documents into a folder with the unhurried efficiency of a man finishing a task he had prepared carefully and was now completing without ceremony. He looked up. Her eyes were red. Her voice was stripped of the practiced warmth that had made it so effective for so long. What was left was something smaller and more honest. I know what I did. I know there is nothing I can say to balance that. I just need you to know that I know. He looked at her for a long moment, not with anger, not with the residual heat of someone who has not yet cooled. He looked at her the way you look at a room you used to live in once you've moved out. You remember every detail. The proportions are all exactly right. And it means nothing to you anymore. He said, "Take care of yourself." And he meant it as neither warmth nor dismissal. He meant it as the only honest thing left to say. He walked out. Outside, the sky was the particular flat, bright gray that Charlotte gets in late March when the clouds are high and thin and the light comes through them without choosing a direction. He sat in his car for 3 minutes. Then he drove to his sister's house and walked through the front door. Lily was in the kitchen eating cereal and narrating her current position in an ongoing debate with Patricia about whether cereal was an appropriate afternoon snack. a debate that Patricia was clearly losing on procedural grounds. Lily looked up. Daddy. She studied his face with the particular scrutiny that children apply when they sense a thing is over and are waiting to be told. You okay? Yeah, he said. I'm okay. She considered this. She looked back at her cereal. She said, without looking up, You look like you set something down. He sat next to her at the table. He stole a spoonful of her cereal, which she protested on principle. He listened to the rest of the debate. He stayed for dinner. Life moves differently when the sustained pressure lifts. Not immediately. The body doesn't know right away how to operate without the thing it has been bracing against. But over weeks, the bracing eases. The shoulders drop. The sleep comes differently. The real kind, not the managed kind. Adrian rented the house from Renata's sister under a temporary arrangement while the financial proceedings concluded. A clean 3-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood in South End with a backyard that needed work. And a kitchen that got morning light in a way that made the first hour of the day feel like a reasonable place to start. He put Lily's room together before he touched his own. She chose the colors. A deep teal she had been requesting since she was 9, and Renata had always redirected towards something more neutral. He painted it himself on a Saturday while she was at a tournament, and when she walked in, she stood in the doorway for a long moment, and then she said, "This is exactly right." Which was, he thought, one of the better things he had heard in recent memory. Her school performance did not slip. He watched for it. He watched for the signs that a 12-year-old shows when the floor of her life has shifted. The withdrawal, the grades, the social volatility that adolescents use to externalize interior disruption. They did not materialize. What he saw instead was a version of his daughter that was, if anything, slightly more settled, as though the particular tension she had been absorbing without knowing it was no longer in the air. She talked about her mother in the measured, careful way of a child who has understood something without being told it explicitly. She asked questions that were genuine, and Adrian answered them the same way, fully, without editorializing, without placing a weight on any of his answers that would have required her to manage it alongside her own. One Sunday evening after dinner, she sat across from him at the kitchen table with a social studies worksheet she had finished 3 days before and was reviewing purely out of habit. She looked up without preamble. "Dad, did you know?" Before all of this. He set down his coffee. He thought about how to answer that honestly. "I found out something was wrong, and I spent a while making sure I understood the whole picture before I did anything about it." She thought about this. Why? Because some decisions are too important to make when you're in the middle of the feeling. You have to wait until you can see clearly. She returned to the worksheet. Then, without looking up. "That's a real answer." He smiled. "I know." The business continued its steady, unglamorous ascent. He had always built it the same way he built everything, incrementally, without shortcuts, with the patient attention that looks like slowness from a distance and only reveals itself as something else once enough time has passed. By late summer, it had cleared the projected valuation that Renata's filing had been targeting, the number that had been, in her planning, the moment to strike. He noted it in his records without ceremony and moved on to the next quarter. The divorce was finalized on a Friday afternoon in September. He signed the last pages in Raymond's office. The city outside Raymond's third-floor window was doing the early fall thing, that particular quality of light that September has in the Carolinas, still warm, but with a different character to it, the quality of light that knows something the summer didn't. He shook Raymond's hand. He said thank you and meant it precisely. He drove to pick up Lily from soccer practice. She was waiting on the curb with her bag over one shoulder and her hair still in a game braid, talking to 2 girls from her team. She spotted his car, said something that made both girls laugh, and jogged over. "What do you want for dinner?" he asked. She considered with the gravity the question deserved. "Tacos," she said, "but the homemade kind, not the fast food kind, because it's Friday." He drove to the grocery store. They argued about whether shredded cheese from a bag was equivalent to freshly grated, a debate with a clear correct answer that she continued to contest on principle. They bought everything. They made tacos. She grated the cheese herself, under protest, and admitted, once she tasted it, that there was a perceptible difference. This is how things settle. Not in grand gestures, not in moments of arrived at clarity that announce themselves. In taco nights and teal-painted rooms and a 12-year-old who grabs the hand of the person across the counter from her without looking up and says, still chewing, "Thanks for the cheese, I guess." He gripped her hand back. "Sure," he said. "I guess." 6 months after the finalization, he met a woman named Vivienne Okafor. No relation to the judge, a coincidence she had learned to lead with, at a community fundraiser for an after-school literacy program that Lily's school participated in. He had nearly skipped it. He had told himself he was tired, which was true. But the kind of tired that is really just the body's reluctance to transition out of a long defended posture into something more open. He went anyway, because Lily had asked him to go, and because he had not yet found a version of himself that was capable of saying no to that specific request. Vivienne was 38. She taught middle school English 2 neighborhoods over and had strong opinions about the importance of what she called the gateway book, the one specific title that converts a reluctant reader into someone who can't stop. And she delivered those opinions with the quiet conviction of someone who has watched the theory prove itself out repeatedly in the real world. She met Lily 3 weeks later at the same literacy events follow-up meeting. Lily assessed her in the particular forensic way she had been assessing new people since approximately age 8, asking 3 questions that appeared casual and were not, and then announced, on the drive home, that Vivienne seemed like a person who actually listened, which was her highest designation. Things progressed the way things progress when no one is forcing them toward any particular shape. Dinners. Saturday errands. A Sunday afternoon at the Botanical Garden where Vivienne and Lily argued cheerfully about which plant had the most unreasonable name, a debate that had no resolution and was clearly not seeking one. On an evening in the following spring, Lily was at a sleepover. The house was quiet in the particular way that a home is quiet when its main source of motion is temporarily elsewhere. Adrian sat on the back porch with a glass of water, and the particular stillness of a man who has stopped waiting for the other thing to happen. Vivienne sat beside him. They talked for a long time about ordinary things, and then for a while about nothing at all, which is the better conversation. The neighborhood made its evening sounds. Somewhere down the block a screen door opened and closed. The light shifted in the slow, specific way of spring evenings that are in no particular hurry. He thought about Lily, asleep in some other house, completely fine, completely herself, the particular resilience of a person who has been given, from the very beginning, something solid to stand on. He thought about Patricia at that kitchen counter, setting something down. He thought about 14 years of Saturday waffles and soccer sidelines, and homework about the Louisiana Purchase and bedtime routines that required negotiation and the 1,000 entirely ordinary acts that constitute a life spent showing up for another person. He had built something. In the dark, in the quiet, without an audience, in the moments no one documents or measures or applauds, he had built it piece by careful piece, not because it was strategic, not because he was preparing for anything, because it was right, because Lily was right there in front of him, and the only reasonable response to that fact was to be worthy of it every day. No one can take what you have truly built. Not the filing, not the 14 months, not the dinner table, the envelope, the practiced smile, not any of it. What Adrian Holloway had built was not in the accounts or the paperwork or the outcome of any proceeding. It was in a 12-year-old who grabs your hand over a bowl of freshly grated cheese on a Friday night and says, "Thanks, I guess," and means everything by it. He set down his glass. The evening continued without needing anything from him. That was exactly enough.